Hello and welcome to Evolving Threads. This is a monthly webcast where I, Lyndsi, discuss all things fiber related, including my own fiber business where I embroider on birch tree bark, as well as all of the different aspects of the fiber world that have come together into my work and into my life. So I hope that for you, this will be a fun and interesting insight into the sometimes wild and crazy mind of an artist, but also looking into the artistic process and how different aspects of that, of things that I encounter, inform my practice and how that is manifested in art, as well as kind of a fun inspiration looking at other projects that maybe you could take on and do, or just time to sit and craft while listening to someone babble about their own work, or just engaging with somebody who is making, which I think is really exciting to hear what other people are doing and why they're doing it. And I think it connects us all as a community. So I'm hoping that you feel inspired to interact and ask questions, and I will address those questions or perhaps suggest things that you'd like to see, and then I can kind of incorporate those into my practice and my videos and perhaps give some different technique videos and other segments that might give you some insight into how you could incorporate this into your life as well. So with all of these videos, what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about what's going on in my studio, what I've been working on, some kind of works in progress, as well as things that I've just recently released or I'm about to release, upcoming projects that I'm thinking about for the future, and how those projects are kind of incorporated into some of my other hobbies and pursuits. I'd like to talk about what I've been making and hear about what you've been making, as well as share some of the projects that I've really enjoyed that have just been for fun. And I will also be kind of giving this a little bit of a newsletter twist as well. So for those of you who are just interested in what I have upcoming, I can share some information about what's coming up. But I'd also like to talk a little bit about the books that I've been reading and things that have been inspiring me, because I think all of those things come together and create an artistic practice. So books and outside projects and conversations with community, I think kind of all come together to inform that. So hopefully you feel like you can sit down and enjoy this, maybe with a craft or some tea or some coffee, or as you're on the go. But thank you for being here and joining me. And like I said, I've committed to doing this once a month, and we'll kind of evaluate that after a year has passed and see how we're going. But please do let me know if there's anything that you'd like to see coming up in future episodes, or anything like that. I want to share a really exciting release that I have coming up, actually this week. So what I've kind of been working on a lot lately is stocking up galleries, because it's the summer here in Alaska, which is when everything opens and gets busy and the sun is always out and it's a little bit wild and crazy. And so it's the time where people are going to art galleries and purchasing art and bringing things home to their families, which means it's the busiest crunch time for me as I'm trying to keep them all up to date. So aside from doing that, I've also been working on some earring collections that I can send off to the galleries, because the earrings that I make have become rather popular, which is great. And I feel so honored that people like to wear these beautiful, big, intense earrings on their ears and take them out into the world. So the earrings that I have available coming out are this pair. So we've got some embroidered clouds onto bark, and then some nice lovely rainbow fringe, and then the backs are indigo dyed salmon leather that I have tanned. And then I have a sunset collection, or sunset pair. I just absolutely love these colors. The backs are tanned salmon leather that's been dyed with madder, and the fringe, the bottoms of the fringe is actually all sunstones, which I thought was appropriate. And then one of my favorite pairs is the rain cloud pair, very sparkly, and very actually appropriate for our spring so far, which has been incredibly rainy. And then these again are backed with salmon leather that has been dyed with indigo. And then these are probably my favorite because they remind me of our winter sunrises and sunsets. I guess they kind of all blend together. But it's so dark in the winter, but the colors that we get when the sun comes up are just absolutely extraordinary. And I love the pastels, and it just highlights the mountains in these beautiful pinks and purples. So I did this pair as a reminiscent feeling about our summer or our winter sunrises. So it's kind of those pastel colors. And the bottom fringe is moonstones. And then the salmon leather is dyed with cochineal, which gives this nice kind of earthy pink. So those will be coming out this week on Thursday, which is today, if you're watching this the day it released. And they will just be on my website for that day. And then they will all go to galleries, any that don't sell. And just a reminder that 10% of these pieces will be donated to the Trevor Project in support of LGBTQ youth. I've also released a couple original pieces, which I'll put pictures of right here because they are currently in galleries. But if you're interested in them, just let me know. Otherwise, just enjoy them. They're beautiful. And I also have prints of all of them as well. On the earring front, I am working on a couple other pairs that I will be sending out shortly. These are far from done, but these will be some fireweed earrings, and you can see they're kind of an oval shape. Sorry, it's backwards on my screen. So these are kind of an oval shape, and I've kind of been doing those just to keep them on the smaller side, not quite so heavy. The beaded ones are not heavy. Birch bark isn't heavy, so there's not a lot going on here, but they're certainly heavier than, you know, tiny earrings, obviously. But these ones that are just bark and salmon leather with no beaded fringe are a lot lighter weight. So I'm working on those. I'd also like to do a couple pieces that are not my normal bird earrings, which has like the bust of the bird and then the fringe that mimics the color of the bird. I want to do some of these kind of cameo style with the ovals and just the bird inside the oval. So I'm going to give that a test. It's really hard to embroider on birch bark really small things because the birch bark tries to fall apart. So it's definitely a difficult skill to master, especially when there's detail to be added. But I think at this point in my embroidery career, especially specifically on birch bark, I've figured it out enough that I think I can do it now. So I'm going to try to do those. And I'm also going to try to do some mammals in my typical style with like the bust and the fringe. So perhaps some bears or some moose, and those will probably be off to the gallery in Denali that I work with. But that's kind of what I'm working on for earrings. If you have any specific requests, please drop them in the comments. I would love to know what you want to see because it's fun for me to make things for me that I love, but it's also fun for me to step outside my comfort zone and make things that I never would have thought to make otherwise. So let me know. As far as larger pieces, wall art pieces, I'm working on some commissions. One of them is this orca piece that has a long way to go still. I'm working on the orcas now. And then there's going to be a school of salmon at the bottom. And this is, I've got probably 10 to 12 hours into this already, and I'm not even halfway done. So that one has a long way to go still. This one is going to kind of be hard to show. It's just the drawing. I'll just describe it. This piece I've been envisioning for a really long time. There's two moose in the foreground, and then in the background are mountains from the coastal train. The Alaska Railroad has this beautiful leg of the railroad that goes from Anchorage to Seward, and it's absolutely stunning the whole way. So this is going to be an Alaska Railroad piece where the train is in the background and the moose are in the foreground, and there's kind of some beautiful mountains in the background. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I've really been wanting to do it for a long time. It's going to take a long time. This is a lot of embroidery. I don't really know what I was thinking when I decided to do it, except that I'm excited about it. So here we are. This piece is just a little red pole. They spend all winter here, and they, right outside my window, are a bunch of birch trees, and they're just like flock in it all winter long, and they're absolutely delightful. Much like the, personability of a chickadee, they remind me a lot of that. They have these cute little bright red heads. Otherwise they look like a normal little brown bird, but the bright red heads are so cute. So I'm going to stitch one of those. And then this one is my next salmon leather piece. It's going to go this direction. And it's drawn out. I've been kind of holding off for a little while just because I haven't had the time, but it's harbor seals with giant kelp in the background. And this is on salmon leather that I tanned and dyed with cochineal as well. So it's a really faint cochineal. I used a dye pot that was kind of worn out, so it just got just a hint of pink. So I think the gray and the golds from the kelp will really just look beautiful on this piece. I don't envision this being done anytime soon. I kind of have a lot going on up here, but it's one I wanted to draw out because I didn't want to forget about it. So I like to keep those ideas fresh. So that's kind of what's going on in the studio right now as far as immediate works, as well as my commission list, which needs some attention. So if you're on my commission list, I promise I haven't forgot about you. Your earrings will come. I love you. I appreciate you being so patient and waiting for me to make them. I am working on them. Most of them are drawn up. So that's kind of what's happening in the studio right now. Outside of the studio, I'm really excited because this winter I picked up hand spinning, which I never thought I would do. And I was teaching a class and I had some hand spinners in my class, and they fed into my tendency to pick up new projects and encouraged me to do it, and thus it became. And I'm obsessed. I love hand spinning. I never expected to be so immersed in this very slow, very tedious process. I thought that it would bore me, but in fact, it soothes me. And I really love the movement. It kind of connects me to a part of me that I didn't know was there. And that's all very wooey. But anyway, I really love hand spinning, and I'm really excited that I love hand spinning because my big picture idea, something that I've really been wanting to do, is spin embroidery thread. So I really want to spin the embroidery thread that I'm using for maybe not all of my pieces, because that would be a lot of embroidery thread and that would take even more time than these very time-intensive embroidery pieces already take, but maybe some of them. And the long-term goal is using my background that I've gleaned from salmon leather, dyeing salmon leather with natural dyes. I want to put that forward into this embroidery thread and use natural dyes to dye my embroidery thread. But not just natural dyes. I would really like to use foraged dyes from around the state of Alaska that I can then dye this embroidery thread and then use the embroidery thread to create these pieces that are trying to capture the feeling and the majesty that is Alaska in these pieces with this foraged dyed embroidery thread. Anyway, that's the long-term goal. I'm working on it actively with my spinning practice, as well as working with some other more talented spinners than myself to kind of learn how to make the embroidery thread. I mean, basically you're just spinning thinner, but there's some techniques that really help, as well as finding the right kind of fiber prep that makes it a little bit more achievable. So that's kind of long-term goals for my embroidery spinning thing. I have some kind of fun ideas for how to apply that to different pieces, and perhaps not even directly on birch bark, but maybe on some other things. But we'll get there as I start to think through these processes and experiment and play around a little bit, which is really all that art is. It's just experimentation and trying new things and failing at some of them, and some of them are successful, and you kind of just go with it, which is fun, but frustrating sometimes. Anyway, I ramble, I digress. So that's kind of what's going on right now, kind of what I'm doing outside. As far as other fun projects, I want to get into that with my next segment, which is thanks I made it. So every time I film one of these, I would like to wear something that I made. And this kind of plays into something else I want to talk about later. But first of all, I made this shirt and I love it. I recently joined Tori Knits. I'll put her information in the show notes. She has a knit along that she's doing right now with all of her designs, so you can just pick one, and there's a whole group of people that are all talking about theirs and sharing their color plans, and it's been so fun to see what everyone else is coming up with. So I knit this, and I'll show you. It's kind of like a cropped version of the shirt. It's the Skyline tee. It has this like really cool detail on the shoulder. I love the construction of it. This was such a fun knit. In fact, I love it so much, I ordered more yarn and I'm going to make another one in a different color. I did order a different yarn than this one. I love this yarn. This is Sweetgrass from Pearl Soho. It is an alpaca cotton blend, and I think it's delightful. But if you have really sensitive skin, you might find it a bit itchy, because alpaca has a tendency with those long fiber lengths to poke out in places and cause people a little bit of itch. So if that's not your thing, maybe avoid this one. But if you don't mind that, this is lovely yarn, and it has a beautiful drape, and it's so comfortable to wear, and it's just the right amount of warmth for our summers here that are not particularly warm. It's been in the 60s lately and mostly rainy. So, although today is beautifully sunny, so I shouldn't complain. Anyway, I got some yarn from, I'll share it when it comes in, actually. I'm just going to let it be a surprise. It was a pre-order for the month. And they are also donating to, in fact, I'll put it, it's Camellia Fiber Company. I'll put their information in the show notes here. They will be donating a portion of the proceeds from the yarn sales from this month for this specific yarn to the Trevor Project. So anyway, I pre-ordered some of that. I can't wait for it to come in so I can knit another. But in the meantime, I am also knitting another of Tori Knits shirts. This is the Gramercy tee. And here is I'm working on the back of it so far. So it's this lovely little striped. The pink, the main color, it's like a pinkish orange, is Pearl Soho again. And I think it's the Goodwill. It's their sport weight wool, and the contrasting color is actually a hand spun. So this is a garden dyed wool silk blend from Calypso Farms, a local farm and fiber producer. They have Shetland sheep. Anyway, they dyed the wool with the wool and the silk with garden dye. So the blue is indigo, the wool is indigo, and then the silks are dyed with Coreopsis, I think, and marigolds, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Anyway, I spun this up and got this delightful sport weight yarn, so I thought it was perfect to go with as the little contrasting stripes in here. I can't wait. Hopefully next time you see me, I'll be wearing it. So that's one of the works that I am doing. Also, one of my favorite knitwear designers, Andrea Gahn, is doing a summer scrap along, make along. Anyway, the whole goal is to creatively use your stash or scraps that you have, which I find delightful. I don't have a huge stash, but I have enough of one. So I pulled out some hand spun that I had made up this year. One of my early hand spuns. This is Jacob sheep. They are so cute and they have the most ridiculous horns. Anyway, I spun up this Jacob, and then I had some spin cycle in my stash that I picked up that are these crazy vibrant colors. And so I pulled them all out of my stash, and I'm making the Scrappy Checkers sweater, which I will link in the show notes below. But I have a long way to go. This will be a long one. And it's very, this is so much fun doing all these colors. It's really interesting to be working in a heavier weight yarn again after working in a bunch of fingering weight yarn. So it's knitting up so fast. Oops, dropped a stitch. And I'm really enjoying it. But I'm not in a hurry to finish that one as it's summer and that's a winter sweater, and I will not be wearing it soon. Well, it's cold in Alaska. Perhaps I'll be wearing it in August, but nevertheless, I have time. I have some other plans for some other scrappy projects that I want to make for this knit along as well. But if you want to join us, it's all on Slack. I'll put the link below to Andrea Gahn, and you can join us and share your scrappy plans for a fun project there. That's my knitting projects. So having fun with that, and hopefully they will come back in the Thanks I Made It segment next month. Other things I'd like to talk about, projects on the horizon. So this project is huge, and it's kind of been, and I would say it's less of a project and more of a shift in my work. As many of you know, and perhaps some of you don't, my background is actually in biology. So I studied biology and got my bachelor's and master's degree in biology. And I worked for a very short time in the field, and actually ended up shifting career paths multiple times. I am an educator as well. I taught high school science, and now I work as an artist. But one of the things that really struck me when I was teaching biology and working in biology is that there's not a lot of focus for scientists on communicating their work to the general public. Most of it is communicated to other science folks or to organizations that need that information, whatever it may be. But the average person doesn't get to interact with all of this incredible research that they have been doing and putting out unless they're really looking for it. So I have been thinking, as a person who has spent a lot of time in the sciences, but also spends a lot of time in education and the arts, that I'm in a unique position to be able to translate scientific information into a more accessible format, and use that information then to drive change. Because a lot of these projects are looking at, I'm thinking specifically of Alaska right now because this is my home, and so that informs a lot of my thought processes and things that I want to help preserve. And you can only split your attention so many ways. So anyway, with regards to Alaska, there's a lot of things that we know about preserving the land and preserving the wildlife and the importance of that, and how it impacts many, many other things that perhaps the average person living here doesn't know, or does and doesn't really understand the depths of these connections, because everything is tied to each other. So what I want to do is take some of the research that our local biologists have been doing and publishing, and translate that into artwork in order to tell the story of their work. So that would look like perhaps their entire career, what they've been studying and what they found out, or perhaps a single paper that's showing relationships between the land and the wildlife there, and what will happen if that land gets disrupted, things of that nature. So one specific example comes to mind, that I was talking to a biologist who studies seabirds, and specifically eiders. So the spectacled eider, the Steller's eider is endangered, and they live on the North Slope. They nest on the North Slope. And sorry if you're watching this and I'm getting bits of this wrong, but for the most, I haven't read it in a while, but in general, these birds will know when the lemming population is low, because when the lemming population is low, then predators, instead of preying on the lemmings, will be preying on their nests and their chicks and their eggs. So these critically endangered birds are not even going to nest if the population of lemming is low. So there's this interplay between these things, and what's impacting the lemming population, and how is that impacting the birds and these birds that we're trying to preserve, and what does this mean for the land and how we use it. So that's kind of just like a very brief and maybe a little bit sketchy description of kind of what I'm looking at, and how I want to tell these stories and how I want to use that to support land preservation and appropriate land use, and telling the story of the things that live here and how they live and why they live and what they do, sometimes for us and sometimes for each other. So that's kind of like my overarching goal with my work and how I want to use my work moving forward, to support policy changes and to support the biologists who are in the field doing the work, and perhaps don't have the time or energy or ability to tell their stories to the general public. So it's kind of a lofty goal, and it's big, and it feels meaningful to me. So I'm really excited about it, and I hope that if you have any suggestions, or perhaps you are a biologist doing the work and want your story shared through art, or you know of someone who is, or you know of a cool story that needs telling, please drop it in the comments. I would love to hear it. I'm really just starting this kind of shift in my work, and it probably won't all be that, but a lot of it will be. So I'm starting to look for papers and starting to look for people whose story I can tell. So if you know of anything that you think I should look at, I would love to hear. Thank you. I appreciate it. So that's kind of what I'm working on. That's projects on the horizon, big projects. So I'll keep you updated kind of as that process goes, and with the new things that I find and what I'm excited about as I discover it. Books. I want to tell you about this book that I've just finished reading literally today. It's maybe I'm behind the times. In fact, I am behind the times. But this book is called Worn, and it talks about, and I'm going to put it up here probably. It talks about the history of textiles in the world, predominantly in the US, because that's where the author is, but also the origin of textiles and how that has changed. And really, I think one of the big takeaways for me was how much textiles have interacted with the history of colonization and slavery and exploitation of workers and exploitation of women, and how different movements have come about because of textiles. So it's the industrialization of textiles and kind of colonialization. So kind of from an American and European perspective. So she talks first about linen and cotton, and then synthetics and wool. And it's just this incredible deep dive into the journey of textiles through history. And it was powerful and emotional and infuriating and inspiring, and it's made me very aware, and I already was, but even more so aware of where my clothing is coming from and where it's going, and how important it is to reduce our waste and mend our clothing and buy less clothing and be aware of companies that are making smart choices and ones that perhaps are not making such smart choices. So I highly recommend it. Please read it if you haven't already. And if you have, tell me your favorite parts about it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the book. Yeah, it was incredible. So I'm off to find another book that I will be reviewing next time as well. And they'll shift, sometimes it will be kind of natural history, and sometimes it will be current events and things like that. But I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy. I probably won't be talking about that much here, but other things that kind of inspire my work versus things that just take me to another place when I need that to happen. But anyway, Worn, I highly recommend it. It's an incredible book. It makes me want to buy no clothing and mend all of my clothing and make all of my clothing. I am going to start sewing soon. I used to sew when I was a kid, and it's been a long time since I've sewn any garments. So I have a pattern that I'm going to be making some pants. I don't have the fabric yet. This is very early. Anyway, so I'm going to try to, you know, kind of bring the philosophies and some of the things that I learned from this book into my own practice in my own life. But one of those things is through mending. And I just taught a mending workshop at the university here in town, and it was incredible. And I've got some amazing feedback from my students. So it made that even more powerful and exciting. But yeah, so that's what I've been reading, Worn. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it yourself. The last thing that I want to say today is just kind of some upcoming events. There's a lot of things that I've had to cancel this summer just because of I have a 7-year-old, and my partner is kind of in and out with his work. So sometimes things come up last minute and I don't get to do the things that I'd planned. So my next big event is going to be the Fiber Festival in Palmer. I love going down and visiting with that community and working in the fiber arts. It's super fun. And so that will be in July. But before that, I will be at the farmers market most Saturdays. So if you are local to Alaska, you can find me there, but you can also find any of my work on my website. And that's evolutionarythread.com. But I will put that in the show notes as well. Thank you for being a part of this. And please drop any of your ideas and thoughts about any of the things that I've been talking about today, my upcoming projects, or some new earring designs you want to see, or anything you'd like me to talk about regarding my practice that you'd like to see more of. Please drop that in the comments and share with me kind of what your ideas are. Otherwise, thanks. It's been a great time. I will see you next month. Thank you for tuning in to Evolving Threads with me, Lyndsi. Bye.